My name is JJ Ashghar, and I'm a developer advocate for IBM. As you can tell, unfortunately, I'm being pre-recorded today. I still like to thank the Python Web Conference for still having me, but I'm dealing with some logistical issues, so you get to see me pre-recorded. It's all good. I'm still on the Slack, and you'll see my contact information here in a minute. So if you have any questions or thoughts after this talk, don't hesitate to reach out. I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. But again, thank you so much for being here, and I hope we have some fun learning some stuff about GitOps. Let me go ahead and switch my screen over here. There we go. We're going to be talking about taking a step back and leveraging GitOps to wrangle your clusters and your projects. Again, hi, I'm JJ. I really do have the email address of awesome@ibm.com, and you can find me more or less everywhere at JJ Ashghar. I'm also on Mastodon, so find me there, and never hesitate to reach out if I can answer any questions. So the whole point of this talk is basically to try to get people to understand the power that is GitOps. It's very in vogue now. People are really starting to understand the power of it, but there's a lot to the ecosystem. And if you're willing to step into this space, you can really truly get the velocity you need. And as people start growing more and more Kubernetes or OpenShift clusters, and it's not just one, you need some way to deal with drift. And believe it or not, GitOps is a perfect first step into this space. So we're going to be looking at it from two very different angles. And the beauty of it is it leverages the same core technologies, so both your operations and your developers can leverage it. So let's get started. First thing we need to talk about is the difference between CI and CD. CI is something that is pretty much industry standard now, right? Like you're probably running GitHub Actions or Travis or Jenkins or something on your software. And you're continually running your tests whenever you push up into your shared repository of whatever the software or whatever you're using, GitHub or GitLab or whatever. So it's become industry standard. We're all understanding that. CD usually gets tacked on when you talk about that work, but you're not actually, most likely not doing continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is if all the tests pass and you click that merge to main, your software gets deployed. Very rarely do companies actually do this. GitOps, on the other hand, is one step closer to that nirvana that is CD, continuous delivery. And what we're going to do in this talk is really talk about and leverage portions of GitOps to move to that wonderful, wonderful ecosystem where you can just trust the bots to do the work for you, and you can just get the software out when it needs to be. There's a lot more guardrails around it, and there's a lot more nuance to it. But from a 50,000-foot view, it really, really, really does benefit you. So simply said, GitOps is the way to leverage the typical Git workflow in configuration of one or many Kubernetes, or in my case, OpenShift clusters, and the applications inside of them. So GitOps is your source of truth, right? Like whatever is inside of the Git history or whatever is inside of Git at that time is what it will be out into your application stack. So already benefits you get. You get a history, you get a cryptographically signed audit log of what you're pushing out there. There's a lot of really great advantages of leveraging Git for this. In this push versus pull ecosystem though, GitOps is pull-based mainly. Okay, fine, you can turn some push things on, but the idea is that GitOps, you constantly pull your Git repo to see if there's been any changes, because you know that big old hash. If that hash changes, that means there's something different. It means I need to pull and do something else. Unlike where push is, where you actually push the change out to your endpoints, with GitOps, you're constantly polling against it. And that's really important to know because it actually horizontally scales a little bit more effectively. Now you don't have to know about all the endpoints that you need to push to. If you turn this GitOps process on, it'll poll against a central location. So it's a many to one relationship instead of a one to many relationship. So if you're looking at more flexible, elastic environments, now it's everyone needs to call back home instead of home calling everybody, which, believe it or not, at the larger scale is a lot less overhead. So, a great question. Well, why should you care? You've probably moved into this cloud native space, right? Like if you're at this talk or you're moving into the cloud native space, you're probably starting to see all these containers. And you're starting to see the spindles of dealing with your application. So GitOps will make your life a little bit easier. You have multiple Kubernetes clusters or OpenShift clusters, and there's probably spread around various clouds, right? Like you probably got one inside of Azure, one inside of AWS, or maybe whatever. They're starting to sprawl. So back to that one to many relationship or many to one relationship. Now, leveraging something like GitOps, you actually can talk back to a controlled unit. But don't worry, I'm here to help you get your head wrapped around this tool and this ecosystem. So you can wrangle your clusters and your applications from a command and control kind of environment. No longer are you going to not know if that deployment.yaml or that Helm chart you're installing is the most up to date, because it will be, because it's enforced by the GitOps principles. Leveraging GitOps and the principles around it will mash up your infrastructure management and your software development practices into one audible, accountable, and enforceable interface to take care of your whole fleet. There are a lot of people out there who just have one cluster. GitOps still can work in one cluster. But as you start building more and more environments, your dev environment, your QA environment, you're going to want to leverage some type of consistency through them. And at least from my standpoint, leveraging GitOps to do this made my life significantly easier. In this talk, I'll be walking you through very possibly the same very strong relationship to your actual situation, why GitOps has become the de facto way to maintain your clusters, the advantages and the struggles in going down this path, and strong suggestions on the fastest path to success. You should know that you can take tidbits of this and actually implement it tomorrow if you really wanted to, because a lot of this is frankly benign. It's just adding those workflows and that process in there to be successful and understand where the guardrails are. So then if you start going down this whole hog, you'll be amazed on the lack of actual interaction you need to do, because again, the bots do all the work for you. This allows you to focus on what makes your business actually run instead of dealing with the infrastructure parts. And then before you know it, with the CI ecosystem, making sure that all your tests are running, and then if all the tests are green, when you merge to main, you let the GitOps practice take it and run with it after the fact. Of course, you're gonna have to, every company does this a little bit differently, so you're gonna have to like figure out how to fit it into the path, but it'll be there before you know it. And it's great. So just before we go any farther, let's just talk about a typical Git workflow. This is a very simple Git workflow. It's not the end all be all. There's so many different philosophies and ideas around this, but we're going to take a very simple one and just kind of talk about how, if as long as this makes sense to you, GitOps is not far from that at all. And I want to say again, this is not the end all be all way of doing it, but it's just a simple example to make sure that we're all on the same page. And you'll probably become more complex later on, but you need to at least start somewhere. So we've all seen this before, right? You've got your main branch running along, and you have a feature or a bug fix come off your branch, and then you move it back into main. Whatever's in main should be deployed, right? Like should be deployable. That's the theory. Of course, if you'd start tagging with versions, et cetera, but at least in the world I live in the world that I try to be in, main is always deployable. And then as soon as it's all green, you merge that feature or bug fix in, and then it fixes that problem, and you know that it has those things inside of it. It's important to recognize that, again, this is a very, very basic one, but the idea is that you can branch off and test the ways. It's important to recognize for GitOps in general. So let's talk about some different options to kind of make this happen. There's a lot of different paths to go down. I chose a very specific one due to my exposure to this ecosystem, and we're going to talk about the specific ways of doing it. First thing we're going to talk about is more detailed pull versus push, right? By default, the Git software that we're using is going to be doing a pull version. Again, back to the horizontally scaling easier. Many different follower instances of clusters or applications will be constantly pulling from a central location that we all agree is the source of truth, instead of the central location pushing out to all of the different clusters. In larger environments, that's great. If you need to start, if you're looking at an enterprise and you need to build a cluster per business unit or something like that, you could be in a completely different silo that they don't even know that exists, that all these different business units exist or whatever. So if you just standardize that, hey, you go to this Git repository, get all your configuration changes to standardize on things, it makes life a little bit easier. So it's very important to understand that. Not to mention also in an air-gapped environment, a pull environment is much more advantageous because you can have that separation there too. It's very hard to push across an air-gapped environment for obvious reasons. You can use the push environment of like using webhooks to whenever a change happens, it pushes out immediately. Again, that requires a lot more setup, and in a scalable model, if you are going to be very static and piecemeal about it, I get it, it works, but we're going to be focusing mainly on the pull side here. So there are three main players in the GitOps movement. One's Argo CD, Jenkins X, and Flux CD. Flux CD on the right-hand side there is the de facto starter of this whole ecosystem. It's a very simple, straightforward, does one job, one well. It's very Unixy based. It's not great for demos, which is one reason why you don't see a lot of demos out there, because it does one job well, and it just verifies against a couple configuration files, and it just does its job. In a lot of ecosystems, that's all you need. That's great, right? So don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it. It is great for what it does, but it's not great for trying to teach the concepts around GitOps. For me, that's where Argo CD comes into play. Argo CD is a project that is very supported by Red Hat and OpenShift now, which allows you to do some really neat stuff and really pretty graphs and things. And that's what we're going to be playing with here in just a second. And we'll go deep into it, or I should say not deep into it, enough into it so you can actually see the power that is Argo CD. And then finally, we have Jenkins X. The CloudBees team recognized that the cloud native space and Jenkins, or traditional classic Jenkins, wasn't really fitting 100%. So they went back and revisited and created Jenkins X. And they have a whole GitOps movement inside of Jenkins X. If you are deep into the Jenkins ecosystem, you'll feel very at home in this space. I actually have a handful of videos and streams of me playing around with Jenkins X that were very well taken. I was very impressed with what was going on. But for my own personal choices, Argo CD seems to have always kind of just fallen into the space that I need to. But don't knock until you try it. There is a very these three different pieces of software have three markets that they're targeting, and it really depends on what you're looking for. So long story short, as I like to say in most of my talks, you got to do your homework and figure out where it fits for you. But we're going to play with Argo CD first. So let's go ahead and install one. I'm going to go ahead and grab my terminal here. And if you've never seen a cluster here, this is a Kubernetes cluster. I'm going to go ahead and open up my web console right here. And here we go. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and log into my cluster here. Copy this command. excuse me. Let's see here, display token. Don't worry, even if after the fact, you cannot steal this from me because I will be deleting it after the fact. I'm going to log in right now. And this cluster is completely empty, which is one of the advantages here. I'm sorry about that. So here we go. As we can see here, if I come over to developer, you'll see a bunch of default stuff, but no actual clusters. I've created a installation doc here of just simple Argo CD. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create a namespace right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab the stable manifest. We're going to go ahead and install it here. And as you can see, if you didn't know, you can use kubectl to talk to OpenShift clusters. Kubectl and OC, or kubectl is, or I should say OC is actually kubectl, just with some OpenShift stuff on top of it. So never fear, kubectl still is around, which is nice. There are other ways to install Argo CD and Jenkins X for that matter, and Flux CD on OpenShift clusters through something called operators, but I want to use the one that you can run at home too. These commands, as I said, you can just run them easily on your own box here. But I'm going to go ahead and split this window real quick, and I'm going to port forward .argo CD. There we go. So if I come over here and go to localhost 8080 HTTP S, and go ahead and view the certificate. Yep, that's the Argo CD, so I'm connected to the correct thing. And yes, I really do want to visit this. There we go, we got Argo CD. If you've already noticed, I've already, like a completely blank cluster, a couple commands, already got Argo CD up and running inside my cluster. Yes, I can put this in front of, a load balancer and all that jazz, but frankly speaking, Argo CD is an administrative level stuff. So you should just do port forwarding, let it do it inside of it, and you do not want to expose this to the outside world. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the password so we can actually log into this thing. Go ahead and grab this. There it is. And I'll come over here and do admin Argo CD. So there you go, already, right? Like, I already got Argo CD running on the cluster doing the thing. That's cool, right? Like, JJ, you installed some software and some manifest. That's not 100% cool. I mean, it is kind of cool, but whatever. You get my point. So there is an actual way to install a bunch of different applications, but what we're going to do is one of the first things that kind of convinced me that this was the path forward is the infrastructure management, kind of what I alluded to when you have multiple clusters. Now, know that you can run this on any Kubernetes cluster. So if you have multiple clusters popping up, this is, you can run this against all of them, but I'm going to focus on the OpenShift side. And if you didn't, you may have, I kind of just breezed right over it, but if you go into your Kubernetes or OpenShift cluster here, there's a lot of cool stuff, right? Like you see operators, administrator, right? Like if I go into the developer, I'm looking at my developer side. This is, frankly speaking, a little bit overwhelming when you first look at it. If you want to look into like the Argo CD namespace here or project space, you'll see all the stuff inside of it, clicking around and all that jazz. But let's just take something simple, right? Like we have this little drop down up here, and there's a manage cluster button here. Wouldn't it be neat if we, if we had a bunch of wikis or something, or for that matter, if we all decided that we needed a way to, a link to everything, right? Let's just say this is going to be a link to Google. So I can take something like this little right here. This is just a simple little manifest. Create a Google link, and this turns it in and puts that up on that kind of side. So we'll come over here real quick, and if I go into tenants here, you'll see that there's this link to Google here. So if I go and see this, so this is a Git repository that I created, and right here is that same Git repository, right? Under OS and then tenants. So we see link to Google My App and Python app. We're going to play with Python app in a minute, but we're going to play with this link for Google first. So I'm going to come over here and grab this URL, right? And I'm going to go into this applications in this Argo CD. We're going to create an application quick. You can do this all via the command line too, but I'm going to just do it through the Google and through the GUI so we can all see what's going on. So we're going to do link to Google, right? I'm going to create the project name with default because I'm lazy. You can actually change the sync to manual or automatic. So if you still don't truly trust the bots to do the work for you, you can do the sync yourself. We're going to do manual for right now. I'm going to go ahead and do all that. That looks right. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go ahead and say head. And as you can see, it's already pulling from it here. Pulling from it here. Path, we're going to go ahead and go to OS, link to Google. This actually grabs from a customize, I believe. If you didn't see inside of it, there was a customize, oops, right here, customization.yaml. So it knows all the dependencies underneath it. That's one of the advantages of it. So then I will come over here to this URL, and then I believe that should be it. So I'll go ahead and hit create. And if assuming this doesn't make a liar out of me, I'm going to click sync real quick. I'm going to force it just because I want to make sure it actually does what I want. And then I'm going to create synchronize. Yes. Do not pass go. Go to jail. No. Whatever. You know what I mean. So you know the joke. So there we go. So I've gone ahead and done it. As you can see, it's pulled the second sound. One of the advantages, again, of Argo CD, it has really nice graphs. As you can see, it created a menu link. All right, cool. So let's actually see if this worked, right? Like, see if it actually did what I wanted it to. Just because I'm paranoid, I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page. I don't think I actually had to do that. Okay. Hey, good, cool, right? Like, I got the link to Google. Let's click on that and see where it goes. Oh, no, it's going to Bing. Oh, that's not cool. We need to fix that, right? Like, that's not what we wanted at all. We wanted to go to Google, not Bing. So we'll go in here, and of course, you know, I wasn't paying attention, and yeah, back in 2022, I put Bing in here, not Google. That's not cool. So what we're going to do before I do that, I'm going to go to app details real fast, and I'm going to enable autosync because I want to show you that it's just going to keep pulling against it, right? I haven't made any changes yet. I just turned it on. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to google.com. That seems more reasonable, right? So then I go ahead and save. Cool. I mean, I could change the logo if I wanted to, but of course I want to go back to Google. Come back over here. And if I come back to applications, it seems it was 2 minutes ago. Don't make a liar out of me. There should be only a minute or two. Come on. Just thinking about it. Well, while that's going, we're going to go ahead and play with our next step here. That's just a simple manifest, right? Like that's one little thing. Let's ramp it up a little bit more, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do Python, or Python app because we're at a Python conference, right? We're going to do on default. We're going to do automatic immediately after this one. So you can have a whole manifest of all these different dependencies and whatnot off of it. You can do as deep as you want. It's smart enough to deal with that, which is nice. If I come back over here and grab this URL again, copy, grab this, put this down over here. Head, of course, I want to go to OS, tenants, my Python app. Oops. Of course, I clicked away. It's never easy. Python app. I'm going to go to automatic, default, repository, Python app. Go to that correct cluster. Now, of course, as you see these cluster URL, I can actually tell this to go to a different cluster, right? Now you're seeing how I can have like one, like I can send this out federated too. So I can push this request out across multiple clusters. So command and control, not only just looking at one cluster to pull, or one repo to pull stuff. Now we're taking the next step, right? Like I can go out and call to another cluster that I have rights to install this, and then Argo CD doesn't have Argo CD installed in that one. It calls over and installs it on there for you, which starts getting real deep when you start thinking about it. Python app, create a namespace for it because it's probably a good idea. I'm going to auto create that namespace. I'm going to go ahead and create. So that's gone. That's going to do the thing. So if I come back over here, this was synced. So let's see if we've actually made the change. Made the change. Topology. Look at Google. No, it's still not working. So I must have missed something, but we're going to go ahead and just go ahead and force the sync anyway. Force that sync. It's out of sync. I saw there was a change. Hey, that's not cool. I need to make a change up here. Does the thing. Refresh. There we go. Now, if I come back over to here and click on link to Google, there we go. Now we're back to Google. So already, now I can push this out. I don't know why that auto sync didn't work, but we'll see if that next one does how we want it to. Okay. Sorry about that. So there we go. So let's actually do some little bit more of that application management, right? This is the actual Python app that we're going to be installing. As you can see, there's quite a few different things going on here, but we're going to just focus on the core part right now. I've already pre-baked a couple of the things. I have two different versions of the application, both on ICR. So we're going to start with version 1, and then we're going to update to version 2. So if I come back over here, and if I've gotten this right, we can go back to applications over here. Here we go, everything's synced. This looks good. They've updated something, so we're not going to talk about that. And I come back over here, and then go back to topology. If I remember correctly, we called this Python app. There it is, right here. And there's our little Python app. And here it is, the most amazing app ever, right? Again, this is just a nice, simple Python application. It's just running Flask. I can show you the code if you want, but it's very straightforward. Here we go. This is right here. It's ICR, awesome Python app version 1. Cool. Again, JJ, what did you do? You just use Argo CD to deploy something. That's not super cool. Let's be super cool. So we went ahead and did our testing. We used CI. We're merging into master. Of course, I could use the normal process here, but what does it do? It just basically changes version 1 to version 2, right? So I'm going to be bad. I'm going to go ahead and commit that change, and then push that to there, and then hopefully, if all comes here, how I need to see this go, do what I want. If I refresh this, autosync is enabled. So let's give it just a second here. So while that's going, take it a second. And if I come back over to here, as you can see, the pod is up and running. The ports are all there. Everything's great. You can put all these health checks and whatnot inside of it. But again, it's just a simple little app, which is nice. If we're really lucky, we'll get to see the pod kick off the build here in a second. How about now? Nope. No. Refresh. It's because we're watching it. That's the problem. It's because we're watching it. How about now? Oh, of course. We'll go ahead and hit sync status here. The last 4 minutes ago, it's every 2 minutes. This is the revision. That was that one. So it hasn't actually seen it yet. Deployment app a minute ago. Let's see here. Come on. Try sync status again. 5 minutes ago. So it should be any minute now. It does say every 2 minutes though. What did I do wrong? Refresh. Refresh. Well, it's supposed to be checking. I don't know why it's not doing that how I wanted it to. This is a problem with doing time demos, right? Like you never should be doing every 2 minutes. Whatever. All right. Well, anyway, yeah. Imagine this actually doing in the background. We'll go ahead and synchronize. Oh, there we go. Now it says it's out of sync. Whatever. And it's progressing. So if I come back over to the OpenShift cluster, there we go. There's creating the new container. And we let OpenShift do the work for us here in the background, which is pretty neat. And just to prove to everyone that it is an actual, there we go. Click on this one. There we go. I'm version 2 now. So that's it, right? That was it. I used it to create this little app, or to, oops, sorry, where'd it go? So there we go. And of course, as soon as I stop recording this video, it'll start doing what I wanted to do. But the idea is you can create as many apps on here as you want, right? Like now this Argo CD instance is controlling, yes, it's a local instance, but as you saw, I can control other instances too. I can have Argo CD installed very easily with one command. Back to this one right here. If I go back to this installation basic, this is just an example, like application installation, right? Where I could create a repo of all the configuration changes I needed to all my clusters. So as soon as I installed Argo CD on all of my clusters, and we have a repository of all those Google links or whatever configuration changes we needed, we have them all check into this one repository and do all the things we need, which allows us to scale horizontally. Or I can, have one Argo CD instance control multiple Argo CDs that have all the local separation of powers if I need to. There's a lot of interesting ways to configure this, but hopefully this showed at least a little bit of it to you. So conclusion, right? Like that's it. Like I want to kind of show that from a horizontally scalable standpoint, you can just leverage Argo CD to that CI or CD nirvana that we've been going towards for so long. I really hope this at least wet your whistle on the opportunities that you can probably leverage Argo CD or GitOps in general to make your life a little bit easier. I swear the auto sync does work, but again, doing a live demo, or I guess a recorded live demo, let's go with that. Sometimes the timing just doesn't work exactly how you want it to. So thank you. Please never hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or thoughts. I am here to be helpful. That is my job, and Again, Calvin, thank you for letting me record this ahead of time. And I look forward to any questions that come my way, or for that matter, I look forward to hopefully seeing y'all in the future, either online or around the space. All right, bye y'all.